Again, thank you to everyone who has joined us today for this session of the North Central Farm and Ranch Stress Assistance Center webinar series presented to you by the National AgrAbility Project. My name is Paul Jones. I manage the National AgrAbility Project, which is headquartered at Purdue University. And our topic today is on veterans, agriculture, and stress. We have two presenters today, Dr. Andrea Bjornstad from South Dakota State University and Charlie Jordan from Jordan Farms in Tennessee. A little background on USDA's Farm and Ranch Stress Assistance Network, which is commonly known as FARSAN. It was first authorized under the 2008 Farm Bill, and its purpose is to provide a nationwide network to assist people in agriculture dealing with all types of stress issues. There are 4 regional centers. It covers the entire US and all territories. And if you'd like some basic contact information for all 4 of those centers, you can go to agrability.org/resources/FARSAN. Some of you may not be familiar with AgrAbility. We are sponsored by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and our focus is on working with people in agriculture that have some type of disability or functional limitation. It could be physical or it could be mental behavioral health issues. There are 21 state projects involved with AgrAbility around the country, and there's one national project, again, that's here at Purdue University in the Breaking New Ground Resource Center. We have several partners on that National AgrAbility grant, including Goodwill of the Finger Lakes, the Osteoarthritis Action Alliance, AgriSafe Network, Colorado State University, and Washington State University. If you'd like more information about AgrAbility, or you'd like to review any of the more than 130 archived webinars, you can go to agrability.org and find a wealth of information there. I'd like to introduce our presenters today. First, Dr. Andrea Bjornstad. She's an assistant professor in the School of Education, Counseling, and Human Development at South Dakota State University, and is the State Mental Health Extension Specialist for South Dakota. She is a licensed professional counselor in South Dakota and a national certified counselor with areas of expertise in school counseling and marriage and family therapy. Her outreach and research efforts have focused on the mental health of agricultural producers and military service members. From 2017 to 2020, she received a cooperative agreement with the United States Army Research Institute for the Behavioral and Social Sciences, where she developed and implemented active listening skills training with Army leaders. Currently, with funding from USDA NIFA, she is leading a team conducting a comprehensive needs assessment on farm stress and mental health in South Dakota. She's conducted numerous studies on the factors contributing to stress, depression, anxiety, and suicide. Charlie Jordan is the owner and operator of Jordan Farms in Woodland, Tennessee, which is a 5-acre floriculture operation specializing in annual and perennial market cut flowers, along with all natural forest-grown mushrooms. Jordan Farms also hosts several agritourism events each season, such as photography sessions and yoga classes. Charlie is a veteran of the United States Army, and he retired in 2017 as a Chief Warrant Officer 4 Special Operations Aviator, and he had more than 28 and a half years of service. Charlie holds a master's in aeronautical science and is an adjunct assistant professor at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. He's also a student himself, currently attending the University of Tennessee Knoxville's inaugural horticulture therapist certification course, and also attending Hopkinsville Community College to obtain his agricultural teaching degree. Charlie has been involved with Tennessee AgrAbility for over 5 years and is a staunch advocate for veterans in agriculture throughout the state of Tennessee. So at this point, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and we will be sharing Andrea's presentation as soon as I pull that up.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to see everybody on this webinar. To give a little bit more of a background, I am a former military spouse of 14 years, and my ex-husband served in the South Dakota Army National Guard. And so I helped organize numerous workshops and design curriculum for military families. And I've also explored PTSD and secondary trauma military spouses with research studies. My current focus has changed a little bit into exploring mental illness and suicide risk in agriculture producers and in my role in SDSU Extension. I have not combined the two areas yet, so I'll be talking a little bit about each different population with the military as well as agriculture and some of the literature related to both. Next slide, please. So I thought today we'd start off with a discussion related to culture because each area has different aspects of culture. Both agriculture and military have unique characteristics related to their culture. The farm ranch culture is defined by the members of each operation and can differ based on the type of practice. So someone who practices livestock might have a different values and practices than those that are within the areas of crops. Culture is defined by the way things get done on the farm and ranch, and these values, beliefs, and methods can be passed on from one generation to the next. Through different focus groups that I've held, I've learned that there can be some tension that occurs if one generation believes or has different values or beliefs related to methods than the other generation does. So there can be some conflict when that happens. And within agriculture, it can be difficult to find time to leave the operation as most tasks can be year round. And so when we talk to producers about self-care, they find it very difficult to take a vacation. On the other hand, the military culture is made up of 6 branches, each with their own active duty and part-time components. The military culture revolves around missions, so it's very task-oriented, and a clear hierarchy exists as well as a chain of command. So that's a little different based on farming operation on what that looks like with who's in charge and when they're in charge. In the military, that's very clear. Core values are honor and integrity, and other values are defined based on other types of services. And time away from family can be experienced as military service members experience deployments. Next slide, please. Looking for statistics related to veterans in agriculture, in 2020, the USDA released some of these statistics, but it was based on the 2017 census of agriculture. So I did some searching and I couldn't find anything else more recent. So if somebody else has that available, you can certainly put that in the chat. But based on the 2017 census, the United States had roughly 370,000 producers who were currently serving or had served in the military. And this accounted for 11% of the country's 3.4 million producers. On average, farmers with military service are older than U.S. farmers with no service. So about 70% were 65 years of age or older. Farms with a producer with military service are smaller than average in terms of both acres and sales. So approximately, they accounted for about 11% of agricultural sales. And roughly 73% of these farms operated by producers with military service had internet access. So we still have a ways to go related to making sure broadband services can be obtained. Next slide, please. Some characteristics of farm families. A unique aspect of agriculture is really that interconnection between personal and professional lives. So we have the individual, we have the family, and then we have the farmer ranch, and they're all very related and interconnected to one another. Individual growth occurs throughout our lives, and it's all experienced within the family and the farm and the operation. The home is where the business is, as well as how that intersects. Sometimes it can be can be difficult to separate the individual, the family, and the farm operation. The farm links the past, present, and future. According to the USDA's Economic Research Service, family farms make up 98% of all farms, providing 88% of production. So the majority are family farms. Currently, a significant trend is occurring, and I'm hearing this in the focus groups that I'm holding within my comprehensive needs assessment, is a lot of producers are having difficulties with continuing the family farm and passing it down from one generation to the next. A lot of this is due to the fact that some of their children do not want to take over the family farm. And so there is that increased pressure and kind of that sense of unknowing of what will happen to the family farm. There's also an increased pressure to make the family farm more business-like. Next slide, please. So transitioning a little bit into the mental health of agricultural producers, a lot of the stressors that they experience are outside their control. And so that can be very difficult to cope with when everything feels like it's outside of your control. So we're thinking about market prices and weather and government regulations, healthcare costs, all those things start weighing. And right now we're struggling with input costs and supply and demand. So all these external factors play a role in stress, which can increase the risk of mental health concerns. So related to the military, over time and due to various experiences of war, the United States has acquired large amounts of data regarding the mental health of veterans. So just to give you a little bit of a background, in the 2022 VA Spotlight on Mental Health, it is described that service members returning from a deployment experienced concerns such as increased stress, mood fluctuations, anxiety, sleep disturbances, and psychotic and addictive disorders. We have been aware for quite some time, since 2019. They estimate that roughly 17 veterans die by suicide every day. And the National Institute of Drug Abuse reports between 37 and 50% of veterans returning from Afghanistan or Iraq have been diagnosed with a mental disorder associated with substance use disorders. So we know that we have some extensive data related to PTSD, substance use disorders, those areas within veterans. Although great strides are occurring to understand mental illness with agricultural producers, we still have a long ways to go. And we are aware that those that work in agriculture have higher suicide rates than the general population. Next slide, please. So moving on a little bit into depression with producers, depending on the study, prevalence rates have varied from 7.4% to 24%. My most recent study showed a 26% prevalence rate of mild to severe depressive symptoms. Risk factors for depression have included legal problems, income loss, health declines. We hear a lot about physical health concerns, losing something of sentimental value, maybe it was land or livestock. We have natural disasters that have occurred, including droughts, and then low social support from friends and family. What's very interesting, though, is depression has a strong association with suicidal ideation attempts. However, it can be a weak predictor of suicide. So when we're trying to predict, those that are at risk for suicide, this can be very difficult. Next slide, please. Even less is known about anxiety among producers. Depending on the study, again, prevalence rates have ranged from 19% to 71%. Climate change, weather, market prices, government regulations, and relationship issues have been suggested to be factors contributing to anxiety. In my most recent studies, I'm also seeing a great increase in anxiety among spouses. We talk a lot about the producers, but when stress is experienced within the family system, it trickles down also to the spouses and to the children. Next slide, please. So some key themes related to suicide in producers, pulling up some of the literature. Well, First of all, with the high suicide rate among veterans, various researchers, I kind of want to talk about the veterans first and those risk factors for suicide. And they're kind of, they definitely vary. Various researchers have suggested multiple risk factors, including loneliness, thoughts of self-harm, trauma exposure, acute psychosocial stressors, insomnia, so that difficulty sleeping, mental health disorders, substance use, those things that I discussed previously, high use of opioid medications for pain control, and low cholesterol. Limited research has explored risk factors for suicide among agriculture producers. So I wanted to talk about a few of the studies related to suicide. A psychological autopsy method revealed 6 interrelated themes from those farmers who had died by suicide in this specific sample. And it included masculinity, that need to take care of the family, that independence, the belief that you pull yourself up by your bootstraps, that you hide anything that's bothering you, uncertainty and lack of control. We think about the weather, market prices, government regulations, all those things I talked about previously. Feelings of failure in relationships, because we know within the farm operation, when everybody's working together, there can be conflict that occurs. Mental and physical health concerns, issues with coping, and access to lethal means. Next slide, please. Similar themes were found in other studies. Areas of concern can also include isolation, loss of animals, government regulations or government legislation, changes with technology, and property value. So I listed some other ones there just to kind of summarize some of them together. Next slide, please. So in collaboration with Dr. Courtney Cuthbertson, my most recent study of 600 producers in the Midwest included an analysis of multiple variables, including depression, anxiety, coping, social support, and demographic and farming characteristics. In our analysis, the only factor, so we put all these variables in, and the only factor that emerged as having a significant relationship with suicide risk was self-blame. So it wasn't depression, it wasn't anxiety, which most people think would be related to suicide risk. It was actually self-blame. And when I talk to producers about this, they're not really surprised, because a lot of them do internalize certain aspects of failure or certain aspects, decisions that they make on the farm. So with this study, it implies that suicide risk among farmers may be more related to cognitions, self-blame, rather than mental illness. Next slide, please. My co-presenter, Charlie, will talk shortly about his experiences farming and some of the healing effects of nature. So I just wanted to give a brief background on I found 2 studies related to some community agriculture initiatives. And, excuse me, 2 studies examined these initiatives, including a farm to market model. So this is where they grew their own food and they sold it at a farmer's market, and a peer support model where they provided peer support to one another. We know that producers and veterans can struggle with loneliness, that social isolation, especially in rural areas, sleep difficulties, anxiety, depression, substance use. And what's really interesting about these initiatives is the veterans in agriculture reported improvements in all of these different areas. So we know that there can be some healing and growth that happens within agriculture. Next slide, please. My final slide is on ecotherapy, and this involves treatment modalities that utilize the natural world to assist in healing and growth. I already kind of described some of the benefits that they found in those community agriculture initiatives. So I feel like I'm repeating myself a little bit, but again, when you're working with others in an agriculture setting, there can be increased socialization and peer support, feelings of connection. And I have a lot of producers talk about feeling connected to their land, their livestock, improve self-perception, including increased self-esteem and confidence, increase in energy, and improved concentration and task completion. So I will turn it over to Charlie now, who will talk about his experiences in agriculture.
All right. Thank you very much. I will try to get my share screen going here. Let's see. All right. So my name is Charlie Jordan, and I own Jordan Farms in Woodlawn, Tennessee. And I would first off like to thank AgrAbility for letting me talk here. And I thank Andrea for her introduction and her presentation. So here we go with mine. I'm the owner and operator of it. And also my official farm dog is Smoky Mountain Service dog, Dagger. And he helps me around the place with all kinds of chores. So next, there we go. So me, military-wise, I'm retired CW4, as Paul mentioned. I retired in 2017 after 28.5 years in the Army. I was an aviator when I retired, but I had several different jobs throughout the military, which I think actually helped me as far as my future and experiences. I was a flight lead, which basically means I was a mission manager and a mission lead for many operations. I was an instructor pilot, which was my favorite thing to do. And I was also a standardization instructor pilot, which means that I was the one that wrote the standards and things, the way that we conducted operation as far as being a pilot and operating the aircraft. And I retired out of the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, which is located here at Fort Campbell, where I spent the majority of my career here, about 25 years, my entire career here at Fort Campbell in the Clarksville, Tennessee area. So for me, agriculture and other stuff, I own a fresh cut flower operation, both indoor and outdoor operation here in Woodlawn, Tennessee. I grow several different varieties of flowers, everything from ageratum all the way to zinnias. I have an outdoor operation, which is about 1.5 acres long, and also my indoor operation is a 30 by 100 hoop house where I grow perennials and also do my own research on different cultivars for growing here in the great state of Tennessee. I do forest grown all natural mushrooms also. My main one is shiitakes. I grow over 250 logs of mushrooms in my woods that I have on my property. Also just started beekeeping this year. I completed the Heroes to Hive course over the winter, and this year was my first couple of hives, and it's been a great learning experience so far, and I'll get into that a little bit later too. All right, agritourism. I do many events out here, photography. I host Boy Scout and Girl Scout camping groups out here so they can work on their gardening badge for their achievements. And also I do, as far as photography, several events during the season for different photographers come out for mini sessions and such in the flowers. We also do yoga out here, listen to music, and also I'm having a master gardener meeting next week out here. I'm a horticulture therapist student at University of Tennessee, Knoxville. It's the inaugural horticulture therapy course that was put together by Dr. Derek Stoll. And it's been great so far. It's actually opened up my eyes to many aspects of the social work, psychology, psychiatry portion of horticulture. And it's been an amazing journey so far. I'm also a Montgomery County, Tennessee Master Gardener. Like I said, I've been a part of that for about 5 years, and I'm hosting their monthly meeting out at the farm next Thursday. And as mentioned by Paul, I'm also an adjunct professor for Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. I don't fly anymore per se. I do fly drones as part of my business, but I rather teach it now. The Army had an amazing ability to make things not as fun anymore. And one of them was flying a helicopter. So I decided to teach the subjects instead of flying anymore. So here's a couple of shots of my farm. This is actually from last year. This is when my flower operation really started to take off. Up in the upper left-hand corner, you can see the shiitake mushrooms. Going across the top is my gardens, the fields, along some bees, and my market setup is down in the bottom left at the Clarksville Downtown Market. And the one on the right is my hoop house, where again, I grow several different varieties of perennials, dianthus, delphinium, lysianthus, to name a few. And these are all what I use to sell at my early markets, which mainly covers me from May to about mid-June. A couple other photos just of photo session stuff. I'm a big collector of old VWs, so I have a few VWs that we use for props on the farm. There's our apiary down on the bottom right. Some more, and these are pictures from this year. Same with the greenhouse. It's still coming along. We had about 2 days of spring here in Middle Tennessee, so all the heat and the lack of rain and all the other stuff that we had really put a strain on my operation this year. But that's okay. I worked through it, and so far we're doing a heck of a lot better than I was about 2 weeks ago. Here's some more. I've actually joined the area Chamber of Commerce for Clarksville a couple of months ago. On the top right is what the operation looked like about February into March, when I was starting to lay down the fabric. Those fabric areas are 100 by 50. That's where I plant the majority of my flowers. Towards the north side of the black tarps, the landscape fabric, those are my sunflower fields, along with my wildflower fields. And then the woods all the way to the top is where my mushrooms are. The bottom left is my dog, Dagger, and a couple other little pictures of the greenhouse and bees. All right. So getting into mitigating stress. This is how this veteran and this farmer veteran mitigates stress out here. So I always tell people when I talk to them, and other veterans and not veterans, just beginning farmers in general, is find your agricultural purpose, motivation, direction. Find what you love in agriculture, and you may not find it right away. I know I didn't. I started out with horses actually about 2001 when I decided to buy this farm. I quickly learned that horses kind of fade out over time as your children find other things more interesting, like boys and cars, which my stepdaughter found. So the horses went away. I looked to cattle as my next journey. I was in the cattle operation from about 2008 to 2019. I grew Texas Longhorn cattle, which my niche market was the more health conscious customer base here at the Fort Campbell, Kentucky area. And I sold all natural beef, which basically combined Texas Longhorns and Herefords. So another part is educate yourself on all aspects of your operation, farm and business wise. So learn everything you can about what you want to do. My passion was horses. I learned everything I could about horses. Then I took over on cattle. I learned everything I could about cattle, because when I first started into the cattle operation, I went ahead and processed the cow. I took it to my unit on Fort Campbell and ended up selling out of that in probably about a half hour of beef. And I quickly figured out why, that I really didn't price it right. And so that was a big self-critiquing moment, a good learning point. The next part is after a tour in Afghanistan, I came back. I decided to buy 5 Longhorn cattle. I put them in my barn so they could grow. And then I got deployed about 4 more times, and I came home, and that was about 6 months later. And the cows had grown, and I had to figure out, how in the world am I going to get these cows back to the back pasture? Well, that was part of the education process. I had to learn pretty quick with a couple other warrant officers moving these cows from the barn to the back pasture, that anything is open for discussion. The cows usually like to go where they want to, and that was a very much self-critiquing moment. And from then on, I actually told myself I need to get smarter on what I'm doing. So I learned all I could about cattle. Once I was done with the cattle business, I decided I'd dive into vegetables a little bit. This was about the time I was retiring in 2017. I planted about 240 tomatoes, and I thought I was going to make it big in the tomato business. And with the tomatoes, I planted companion flowers to go with it. Some zinnias. I planted some sunflowers, some other things. And about 2 months into my tomato growing operation, I lost all but 7 of my tomato plants. That was a very quick learning moment for me. And I quickly found that I wasn't very good at vegetables. And because I didn't put the time and effort to really learn about them. So I decided to attend a Master Gardener course. It's about 8 or 9 weeks here in Montgomery County, Tennessee. And I decided, what's the one thing that worked for me, though, in the vegetable operation I tried? Well, the flowers. The flowers survived. And I was like, I think I'm onto something. So I decided to dive headlong into learning everything I could about the floriculture industry and all things about flowers. And I found that I could actually grow these things. My mama could grow flowers. My wonderful grandmother could grow flowers. And I guess it was just something that I was, born to do. So I got into it, and it's been going strong ever since. So I decided also to do a business plan for my operation. I didn't have one when I started into the flower portion. So I decided one day, which happened to be Christmas Eve in 2018, I decided to sit down and write my business plan. So I did. I used a website called AgPlan, which is used by put on by the University at Minnesota Extension. And also, I also relied on my UT Manage, which is University of Tennessee Manage program, to try to help me kind of guide me on how I was going to do my business plan. And ever since I did that, it has helped me run my business and my farm a lot better. It's basically an operations order of how I run my farm. So another thing is start small and grow from there. One thing I like to say to all beginning farmers or just people in general is that you can't have $1 million dreams and have a minimum wage work ethic. It's just not going to work. And that goes for agriculture. There's nobody else out here on my farm that's going to make me work except myself and to be successful. So you have to put everything you can into it. That mitigates the stress for me because, going through the list I just gave you about, I found my purpose, motivation, direction, and flowers. I decided to educate myself all about I could as far as floriculture. I got a business plan for my operation and again, ran it just like an operations order that I used to use all the time in the military. And I decided that I would start small with about 2 to 3 rows. And now I've expanded out for about 2 acres of flowers itself, which it keeps me busy every day, and that's what keeps me going. So face adversity head on. Don't procrastinate. If you have some issues out there on your farm with your plants, with your livestock, whatever it is, don't procrastinate on it. Just say, well, it'll probably get better. No, it probably won't. You have to dive into it. You have to face it head on, whether it's plant diseases, animal diseases, whatever it may be, a cost of seed and plugs. I could go on forever about that for this year, the price of fuel, all that. Take everything into consideration and face it head on. That's the only way you're going to be successful, not only in your business, but that's how you're going to be successful more in your life. So remember that Mother Nature always has the last word. I've learned that every single year, but I've learned from that also, how to base my growing season, how to base my initial planting season on how Mother Nature works and how my zone, which is Zone 7B here in Middle Tennessee, and I learned everything I could about that to help me along. And the last thing is please don't give up. There's a lot of adversity in everything you do out there, whether just life in general. Everything, it may seem everything is out there to get you, to stop you from what you're doing, but it's really not. It's in yourself. You just don't give up. Look within yourself, put everything you can into your operation, don't let anybody or anything talk you out of it. That's how you mitigate stress. And that's how you can move through, from my experience in agriculture, because I knew I would never make it in the corporate world. I just wasn't a corporate world kind of guy. I've been an institutional man my entire life. I've always had a green ID card. I've been in military since the day I was born. And my mindset was always on the military way. So I've taken that and I've used it for my advantage. And I've been able to run my operation just like I ran, my mission set, my group of aircraft that I was in charge of. I run it just like that. I run because my mission statement is to have a successful season every year at my Clarksville downtown market. And that's what I always strive for. So here's my contact information. Again, it's Charlie Jordan. My email is at charlie@jordanfarmstn.com. My Facebook and Instagram is at jordanfarmstn, like Tennessee. And also you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm a Charlie Jordan, veteran farmer educator. And I offer you to connect with me. I love connecting with other people, whether in the profession or outside the profession, in the mental health profession, everybody, medical profession. I love being able to get all that information and be able to apply it. My goal eventually, once I finish my education, is to work hand in hand with my local mental health clinics to be able to work with them and show that plants and horticulture is another way of providing treatment for clients. It's a very innovative way. It's not new. It's been around for forever. Believe it or not, it's been around since the beginning of formal psychiatry. Dr. Benjamin Rush, who is basically called the father of psychiatry, already had, when he had shown that there was a significant improvement when people actually involved themselves in horticulture and working with plants and nature. Another thing is called biophilia, which is our human innate connection to nature and to all things in the environment. The soil, I look at it as I'm plugging myself back in. It's the same way I do with my plants. Every one of my plants is touched by me. I plant over 7,000 plants every year. And each one of those stems I put in the ground, I touch them because I want to be a part of it. I want to be a part of the growing season. I want to be part of the entire process. And when I put my hands into the soil, I'm reconnecting. I'm grounding myself. When I do yard work, I wear Crocs. Sometimes I go barefoot. I just want to be a part of my operation. And when I plug my hands into the ground, it's like I'm turning on the light bulb. I'm getting that. I'm re-energizing myself. And everything I'm doing is me. Everything that you see that you see that you're doing, it's all because of you. And it's only going to be as good as what you put into it. And again, you can't have $1 million agriculture dreams with minimum wage work ethic. And all I have to say is mitigating stress for me has been it's been a challenge, but it's also been another mission that I've taken on full head. And I want to just help my fellow veterans and beginning farmers to show them that, farm can be stressful, but you can mitigate that stress and have a wonderful time doing it. That's all I got, Paul, and I'll stop sharing my screen.
Thanks so much, Andrea and Charlie. I appreciate all the information and expertise you've shared with us today. And just a reminder, you can, to our participants, please feel free to enter any questions in the chat area. If you would like to ask a question verbally, again, you can use the raise hand option. That's under the reactions icon down at the bottom of your screen. Just click on that and we will do our best to unmute you. I'm going to turn things over to Ed Sheldon, who's part of our National AgrAbility project team. He's going to be coordinating the question and answer period. And again, feel free to continue to ask questions at any point during the rest of the webinar.
Okay, get myself unmuted here. Had a question I had to drop into the chat here. I'll try to share my screen. We'll go through the questions that we. All right. Come on. Okay, let's move back up at the beginning. And most of these, I think, could apply to both speakers. So feel free to jump in, depending on the order that we received the questions. The first, and I know this was during Dr. Bronstadt's talk. Do you have suggestions for helping farmers to not engage in self-blame? What can we do to avoid that?
Sure. I'm exploring this a little further right now, as there are two different types of self-blame. One relates to your character and one relates to behavior. So it depends on what type of self-blame is occurring. If it's related to behavior, it's viewed as something that can be changed, and most of the time that can be overcome. But if it's viewed as something related to a person's character, like some type of character flaw, then that's where the problematic self-blame occurs. So it depends on the type of self-blame. If it's internalized and the failure is because there's something wrong with me as a person, that's different than the behavior. So I'm exploring this further. I guess at this point, when I talk to producers, I talk a lot about looking at one's entire system. What is going well? It kind of goes back to that positive thinking. And that's really hard to promote sometimes because, when you're a negative thinker and you're a pessimist, it's very hard to flip it into optimism and positive thinking. But I guess at this point, looking for other coping behavior strategies that might work beyond self-blame can also be helpful.
Charlie, do you have any thoughts on that?
I've talked to some other veteran farmers, and they, they'll come to me and say, hey, I'm having issues with, especially when I was in cattle. Hey, I'm having this issue with, cow doing this, that, and I think it's me. And I also had it with flowers also. Like, I think, I have a black thumb. I can't, grow, and I'm, and blaming themselves for the reason why. And I'm like, I go back to the education part. I tell them, say, hey, look at what the conditions that cause whatever happened, and look at it from that aspect. Don't look at that yourself did it right away. Look at what are some causal effects that might have happened. Was it the weather? Was it the soil? Was it the fertilizer? Was it, the plant itself just wasn't just going to grow. But I first tell them to look at all those aspects first, and you'll probably find usually that it was one of those things that caused the problem itself and not yourself. So always try to tell people to, have a good attitude, and don't blame yourself for everything that happens. Look at the outside effects and then work from there. That's all I got.
And I just want to add one thing. A lot of what's happening in agriculture right now, again, goes back to those external factors that are outside of a person's control. And so a lot of it is reminding producers that they're not alone right now, that, right now, South Dakota, we've had some rain, but we're anticipating a large drought. And going back to, you're not alone in weather, market prices, the input costs, all of these things. And you're making the best decision that you can in the moment of what you have related to what's going on, as well as your farm or ranch business management plan. So I like what Charlie said, is looking at all the other factors besides internalizing it as a failure from within yourself.
All right. Well, let's see. The next one we had come in, the quality of life surveys or studies that were mentioned during your talk, Dr. Brunstad. We have a request if there's a possibility of seeing a copy of those, so there's an email that's
Sure. I'll just plan to reach out to this person and see maybe gather more specific information on what this person is looking for.
Okay. Very good. Very good. All right. I think this question came up during Charlie's talk, but it definitely would apply to both. Any thoughts on traditional therapy versus less formal peer support type programs for veterans?
Well, I can say from my side, Charlie's side, traditional therapy, I myself, I go to therapy myself. I'm a proud, owner of other, mental health issues, which, I'm not ashamed of those. And, I like traditional therapy, but also I like, non-traditional therapy. And that's one of the reasons why I decided to, get certified as a horticulture therapist, which hopefully I'll get, registered as time goes on. But I saw as horticulture and working in nature and farming and agriculture itself, I found that therapeutic, and I wanted to be able to take all I could and learn all I could about those different modalities and different types of therapy and be able to integrate them and be able to help, my fellow veterans and myself also, and be able to share this stuff with my, my therapists, and I talked to them several times about, hey, the great aspects and advantages of horticulture therapy and agriculture. And I'm constantly talking to other veterans about that. And I can't think of a better way to, to handle, mental health issues and other is to have therapy that isn't always straight and narrow. It's vast, it's different, all different types. I just think that provides a better type of therapy and experience for the veterans themselves. And that's just me talking from my side.
This question is interesting. As as a counselor myself, I really think that you have to find what works for you. Traditional therapy has definitely some, benefits depending on the type of therapy that is used and in the level of engagement in therapy. But less formal peer support can also be important, because I'm a strong advocate for just talk to somebody. If you're struggling, please talk. One of my friends is one of the leaders that started Objective Zero. And if you don't know about it, please visit objectivezero.org. You can get connected. Veterans can connect with one another on this app, as well as with helping professionals. And so you can look for the traditional type of therapy, as well as that formal, that peer support from a veteran. So honestly, you have to find what works. If it's not working, try something different. But, as far as traditional therapy goes, I'm always saying that, finding a counselor, psychologist, psychiatrist, whoever you want to see, is kind of like shopping for shoes. Sometimes the fit isn't right the first time, but that doesn't mean we necessarily stop looking for shoes right. So keep going until you find someone that fits well with you, as well as you feel listens best to your story. So thank you.
Okay. All right. Charlie, how much of your stress relates to the current ag issues that we're facing, and how much relates to your past experiences?
That's a good question. My agricultural issues and stress right now is actually, like Andrew has said, and which everybody's seeing, across the country, is the, I had issues with getting my plugs this year, the plant, and this happened in January with me, when I was already ready had all my plans set, everything was set. I was already starting to lay down some landscape fabric. I was getting the hoop house ready for getting the spring flowers in. And then my greenhouse tells me, hey, we're real sorry, but we stopped doing flowers because we just don't have the labor anymore. So we have to cancel our flower operation. And that after you've ordered probably, 50 something trays of flowers and you have everything set, that was a little bit of a stressor. So I had to shift my efforts. I had to, look for other greenhouses, and I had to rely on my friends, other farmers that helped me through it. And again, there was stress for a little while, but again, I relied, on myself, my planning, and my operation, and also my fellow farmers to help me through that portion. As far as my past military experiences. When I got out of the military in 2017, I was lost. I'm not going to lie to you. I knew I wanted to be in agriculture, but my operation was kind of waning at that time. I was going through transitioning out of the military. I was going through a divorce, all at the same time. And so those things were a little bit of a stressor. And I had to really, focus myself on wanting to live my life outside of the military. I was going to have to not, forget everything that I've done, and just completely transition to civilian and forget everything about my past. But no, that wasn't it. I had to learn how to be a civilian. I make a great veteran, and the civilian part I'm still learning. Because again, for my entire life, I knew nothing but military. But I took those experiences and I decided I was going to use them to my advantage. I didn't want to look at them as terrible times and I didn't like it. No, I said I want to use those to help me in life and get through life and to make my dream, which is agriculture, come true. So I had to really dig deep. I had to rely on my therapy. I rely on some good meds. And also I look at my operation as being my therapy. It helps me get through the day. Whenever I'm sad, I can walk right outside to the flower field and I immediately smile. There's no hiding that. So I've seen it as I've improved and I've taken those experiences and now I'm using them for my future. And that's all I got.
Andrea, do you have any input on from your perspective as a counselor?
Oh, I guess I really don't, since that was aimed more at Charlie. And
Okay.
I think that there is some high stress related to current agricultural issues right now. So I don't know.
Okay, that's fine. We'll move on. Okay, this one was mine, and I didn't really know how to ask it. And it kind of ties back to the last question, but those of us that work with veterans and farmers, but especially beginning farmers who come from a veteran background or wherever, how do we balance the fact that, I mean, I don't have a veteran background, but I grew up on a farm and kind of pretty much witnessed firsthand some of what the good, bad, and the ugly. And there's how do we balance that as what we work with folks that are, hey, I want to be a farmer, and knowing that, hey, this isn't a cakewalk, but it also, we do recognize that there's a lot of benefits. So I'm just throwing that out there. My personal question.
Well, this is Charlie. I'll talk. I talk with veteran farmers quite a bit. It's weekly now, especially as we're getting into the growing season and things such as pests and plant diseases that are starting to show up. And I do get that question sometimes, is how, as stressful as agriculture is, and as much stress as you experience in the military, and throughout my career, is there a way, do you, like it says, balance? Are you able to balance both? I say, yes, I'm able to do it, because I rely again on learning and everything I can about my operation and what I want to do. You have to really, my mindset, the way I look at it is, this is a small business. It's a farm that I love, but it's also a small business and I want it to be successful. And I balance my stressors, whether, for me, Memorial Day, that was a stressful, time for me. But, I go ahead and I say, okay, I'm gonna get through it. I'll work through it. I talked to my fellow veterans, this past weekend and friends that are still serving, and we still get together, and that's how I balance it. I have to step away from the farm also. I don't sit out here 24/7 and all day long and weeding, even though it seems like that. I have to take a break too. I have to step back and go, okay, where am I right now? I have to take my own inventory of myself and look and say, okay, is this agricultural operation being a detriment to my mental health, or is it in my health, or is it actually helping me? And from my side, it helps me. It helps me get through the day. Again, it gives me a goal every week. I know that during the market season, that Fridays are my cut days, and I'm going to be out in the morning cutting from 6 to 12 every Friday. And that keeps me going. And that's how I balance all that. That's how I balance, the needs of my farm versus my own mental health needs. And so far it's worked for me. And it seems to be a plan that seems to get me through the day. That's all I got.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I appreciated what Charlie said, because I don't know if you guys can hear all the passion that's in his voice for what he does. And I really think, when I talk to producers, you could hear their passion. Granted, there's a lot of stress in there, but they also love what they do. And a lot of them can't imagine doing anything else. So it's really going back to the passion and what are you doing this for? Why are you doing this? And I encourage that peer support. With the focus groups that I've referenced a couple times, the older producers talk a lot about it's taken them so long to figure out how to let their worries go. A lot of them talk about spirituality. A lot of them talk about letting go of their drinking. They wish they would have done that sooner. A lot of them talk about, I wish I had spent more time with my kids. So Charlie talks a lot about, I take a step off the farm, I reassess, I look at myself, and then I go again. And I encourage the same thing. Take that break, whether it's, half a day or something, step away from the farm or ranch and then reevaluate.
Just a quick statement. We're at the top of our hour. We do have several more questions. If it's okay with our presenters, we'll go ahead and try to respond to those, but others that need to go, we'll have the answers to the questions in the recording if you want to come back later and review those.
Thanks, Paul. This is just a reminder about the webinar survey. It's in the chat link now, or you can click on the link in the chat. Okay, question for Charlie. Do you have veterans come to your farm to help work on the farm?
I do. Actually, I do. That's something I'm looking to hopefully establish even more as time goes on. But I do have veterans and I do have non-veterans come out to work, and some of them return, some of them don't. Weeding out in the middle of July and June can be a little bit of a of a stressor, but they do come out and they really enjoy it. I give them a tour. I let them experience all aspects of it. I'll bring them into the apiary and experience a little bit of the beekeeping. And I tell them, I said, beekeeping is a great, meter for stress and anxiety, because those bees will let you know as soon as possible if you're stressed or not feeling well or being a little cranky. They'll let you know pretty quick. And when I bring them in there, I can see on their face this just big, emotional, just outpouring. They're like, oh my God, this is amazing. I'm in here with 3,000 venomous insects, and this is the coolest thing ever. And I love the reactions on their faces. I love seeing them when they just go and are able to pick their own bouquets, which I do quite a bit. And they'll come out. I'll let them, if they want to pick weeds with me and talk and stuff like that, it's great. And then at the end, I say, hey, you can pick your own bouquet. And their eyes just light up, and they can go and get the clippers and go out there. And I teach them how to, for biosecurity, how not to spread diseases from one plant to the other, how to properly cut the flower and cut the stem for the bouquet. And it's so wonderful to see their face. And then when I have just regular beginning farmers who may not have any military experience, they love coming out here and see the veteranism that I have going out here, which everything's dress right dress. That's the way I was brought up. All my flowers have to be just right, or that's those things, that OCD part. And they love being able to come out and see how I run my operation. And I always tell them, I say, hey, if you want to do this, you can do it. This ain't nothing special. I'm not doing anything that I invented. The agriculture has been around since the dawn of time. So this right here is just another way to make a living and another way to enjoy life. And that's all I got.
Okay. I think okay. That's the last of the questions I have on slides. We had several come in, so let me open my chat and we'll just work through these. So let's see. There was where we were at. So, this is another one for Charlie. Once you've done the ag plan, business plan, how often do you refer to it or change it, update?
That's a good question. And I appreciate everybody that stayed on so far with the webinar. I appreciate it with the question and answer period. So what I do in mine is at the end of my business plan, I have a 2-year and a 5-year plan. The reason I have a 2-year plan is that my county, Clarksville City, is going through a big flux right now with growth. Where our county's growing very, strongly, and our city's growing, and the downtown market that I sell at is changing also. So I decided to have a 2-year, first a 2-year plan, a short, basically, short vision out, not a long vision out, but a short. And why I did this is to be able to steer my operation to what is going on in the city itself and in the surrounding counties. Nashville's close to me, but it's also far away. There's a lot of flower farmers in Middle Tennessee, so my competition is definitely around the Nashville, Franklin, Columbia area, which is Middle Tennessee area. And then Clarksville, I found my niche market, and I'm able to, take that 2-year plan and kind of drive it towards what Clarksville is looking at. And I used a 5-year plan and I kind of based that upon, my perennials and how I grow my long-term flowers and how I want to eventually, end my career in farming and move on to something else. I don't plan on doing it forever, but that's how I do mine. I did do a 5-year, 10-year plan. I decided to keep it a little bit shorter, and that so far has worked for me. That's all I got.
Okay. The next one for Dr. Bernstad. Okay, here. Can you speak to what interventions have been proven effective for rural veterans where lack of internet connectivity and poor access to health care due to distance or whatever are barriers to getting mental health care?
Oh, wow, that's a tough one, especially if they're rural. I'm trying to remember the question. Lack of access to...
lack of internet connectivity, poor access to healthcare. How do you address those barriers?
To be honest with you, most states have some grant funding right now from USDA through the Farm and Ranch Trust Assistance Network. And so I can speak to the North Central region. There are several states that are offering voucher programs, so free counseling services to producers right now, and that would include veterans. That does not help with the internet or anything like that if they don't have access to internet. But, if I guess it goes back to some of their own self-care strategies of maybe mindfulness, exercise, nutrition. I cannot think of the word right now. You'll have to forgive me, but it's basically going back to some of your own self-care strategies if you don't have access to internet or services. And it is a great barrier in South Dakota that, a lot of people are trying to address, as well as in other states. So just continue those advocacy efforts. Go to your legislature. These are things that people should have across the United States and have access to healthcare providers and mental health providers. And we have a long ways to go. We really do. So that's not a great answer. I'm really sorry.
It's a tough question. Okay, another one. You noted that depression appears to be a weak predictor of suicide among farmers. I'm wondering if that differs from other populations, and if so, do you have any thoughts about the reasons or why that may be?
Yeah, honestly, the research is mixed on whether depression is a predictor of suicide. So in my study, and mine was one of the first to use a suicide assessment with producers. And it was a unique finding in that depression and anxiety were not predictors. So it has been a predictor with other populations, but again, it's mixed on whether or not it is a predictor or not. I think farming and ranching, it also depends on how they complete the inventories. So some of them may not want to admit that they have depression symptoms, but maybe they'll check certain things on the suicide risk assessment. It depends on your sample that you're studying. And so those are all limitations to different studies on how large the sample size is. We had a fairly decent sample size of 600. And we used a coping assessment, which other studies have not used. So it just could be that the coping stressor, what the self-blame was just a greater predictor.
Okay. Okay, we'll move on here. Okay, this is more of a comment. I like EMDR therapy. Good book to read about this type of therapy is called Getting Past Your Past by Francine Shapiro. So thanks for that contribution or comment. Okay. What are some suggestions for approaching conversations about lethal means safety? For example, the firearm storage with farm community.
I guess I'll speak. I am not an expert in that area, so I am not aware. Obviously, when I do suicide assessments, I ask whether they have access to lethal means and then create a safety plan if they do. But beyond that, my outreach has not involved this conversation. So unless Charlie has some knowledge in this area, I cannot speak to this subject. But somebody did include later on, Lori from Farm Aid included a program called Calm and provided a link. So Lori, thank you for chiming in and adding a resource there, because I can't speak in this area.
Yeah, from my side, being as a mental health patient myself, and also veteran, and hopefully soon to be an actual therapist myself, is safety plan. That's something that Andrew spoke of, and when I talk to my fellow veterans, and I am not a therapist per se, but I tell them the same thing, like, look, if you got, if there's dangerous items in your house that can cause harm to yourself, have a plan for it. Have a plan to have them removed when you're not feeling quite right for the day or even longer, whatever it might be. But reach out to your to your family, to your peers, and to your if you're in counseling itself, to your counselor, and say, hey, what can I do? Develop a safety plan. That's the best way. I myself have found them to work very good. I've had friends that have them that they've said that they've used them also. So I will totally agree with the safety plan. That's all I got.
Okay, great. Let's see. Here's another comment. Agreed. I went through 3 different therapists before finding one that works for me. So that goes back to, I think, both of your comments. Let's see. Another, I guess, a suggestion. Speaking to the perceptions about traditional masculinity addressing mental health, here is a good educational resource, mantherapy.org, that you can click the link on in your chat box. Let's see. Wait, we just did that one. Okay. There is a huge stressor when farmers cannot set their price with inputs like diesel, or when inputs like diesel and fertilizer are out of control. The bottom line is a much greater source of anxiety than really referenced here. Any thoughts on that? Because it's tough out there.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Beverly, and I'm sorry that I did not touch on that topic, but producers are really, really struggling with those things right now, and it is definitely contributing to an increase in anxiety symptoms for producers. So thank you for bringing that up.
And I'll agree also. Yes, it is. I mean, I'm experiencing it right now. So how I'm mitigating that is I've already started planning for next year. I've already, set some orders in already for plugs that aren't going to come till 2023. But that's how I'm trying to mitigate this. I'm trying to get it now, get in the way I run my operation with my, I don't do much. I'm more of an all natural organic type operation. So I don't use a lot of fertilizer. The only fertilizer I really use is compost. So I've already ordered compost for next year for delivery. So all those things I'm trying to work through now. So when the winter comes and everything about that, I'm good to go. I can actually enjoy my winter, which is my vacation time, and have a very successful spring. And that's just how I work it on my farm, my operation.
Good.
That's all I
Good. Okay. What's the best resource for the financial? Now, this guy's interrupted right with the last question, I think. What's the best resource for the financial toxicity related to farming? And then it's financial assistance if needed. I'm not sure how that. So where are some resources? What are resources that you would recommend for folks?
For me, Farm Credit Mid-America has a good program for new lenders, or not new borrowers. They do a great program with that. I'm actually on the advisory council for Farm Credit Mid-America. So, I say yes. When that time comes, if they do it here in Franklin, Tennessee. They actually have a course coming up here soon. But Farm Credit's another source. Your Farm Service Agency, they're a loan manager for the FSA, is a really good resource. And your basic banks can also do some counseling on loans and look. There's one course that we do in Tennessee, which is really cool. And I know I talk a lot about Tennessee, but we do a lot of educational programs out of University of Tennessee, and it's a master farm manager. And this course takes you through all the aspects of for a little bit larger operations. It doesn't really look at smaller, like 3 acres or less or 5 acres or less, but more larger operations. But the cool thing about it is it goes through all the financial aspects and all the things that you should look for in your operation and what you should prepare for as far as spending and such for supplies, whatever it may be, and how to balance all those things. So, finding your nearest, course or class through your extension agency of how to run a farm financially sound is my best suggestion to do. And it doesn't cure everything. It doesn't cure the inflation or high prices going out, but it can give you that education and try to help you mitigate those things and maybe find a different way to use your money and utilize it. I go certain ways on things. I may buy expensive things on others ways, but I may look for savings on different ways. So one way I did that was landscape fabric versus plasticulture. So I learned that landscape fabric can last 4 to 5 years. Plasticulture, that's one season. I learned that pretty quick. And it saved me a lot of money. So that's my suggestion. That's all I got.
Okay.
Well, thanks again to everybody that's participated today and to our presenters. We certainly appreciate all their information and input today. Again, if you do us the favor of responding to our webinar survey, we'd appreciate your feedback. We will leave the chat open if you'd like to look through those comments. We'll also be saving that for the future to refer back to if you need to refer back. We do these webinars quarterly, so please be looking for another one in August. We haven't got that one finalized yet, but it's part of this series. And so since you registered for this one, you'll be getting information on that one. So with that, thank you again to everybody, and we wish you a good day.